story, which is the Trump indictment, the first federal
There's never been
indictment
anything like this.
of a former president. And I saw a lot of messages last night. Oh, this is the moment where I miss KGO. This is the moment where I wish you guys were still on the air. Well, here we are. And there is absolutely no better person to talk about this with and to dig into it with than an award-winning journalist. You know him. He's a friend of the show. He is, ABC's senior national correspondent, a 2020 correspondent, covered the White House for several years. Of course, big time. It is Jim Avila. Hey, Jim Avila, everybody.
Good morning, Kim. How are you?
Hi,
What a day,
thanks
huh?
for being here.
Woo.
Oh, so that was a surprise. I mean, I think I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was coming so quickly.
Well, kudos to the Independent, believe it or not, because on Wednesday, they said that they thought that there would, they reported, put it in their paper online, that he was going to be indicted on Thursday. And I didn't retweet it or anything because...
Oh, you left me, and I don't know why. Oh,
Yeah,
well.
our stream service has been kind of spotty. Jim.
Oh, there you are again.
And you're back now.
Yeah, but I can't hear him. Jim Avila, I don't know if you can hear me, but I cannot hear you for some reason. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. I didn't know the Independent had that information. Nope, I still can't hear you.
Yeah, just try rejoining, Jim.
Yeah, you might have to go out and come back in again. But I'm excited to have Jim Avila. So hopefully we'll get that tech stuff worked out in just a moment and talk about that. But yes, so I didn't realize that the Independent had kind of called that, but indicted, here's what I can tell you. Indicted on 7 counts in the special counsel's classified documents probe. And again, it is the first time that a former president has faced federal charges. He faces a charge under the Espionage Act. Charges of obstruction of justice, destruction or falsification of records, conspiracy and falsification of records, false statements, rather. Of course, he, as former President Trump, denied any wrongdoing. He came, do you have the video of that, of him, Albert? He came out last night with this video where, of course, he lays the groundwork, just like he laid the groundwork before the last election, when months before the election, he said, you know, if I don't win, it's all a scam and a hoax, and they've tampered with it, and it's all their fault, not my fault. If I don't win, it's because they cheated. Way before the election, he said that. Of course, laying the groundwork for the case that the big lie, the big hoax, right? And so now we get this groundwork laid as well. You know, the only reason they're doing this, he says, is because I'm a candidate for president. Okay, right. Let's bring formerly of ABC and now friend of the Mark Thompson Show, Jim Avila, back to the mix.
Sorry about that,
Hi.
Jim. Hope it works now. Okay.
You know, text.
So anyway,
happens.
I was just saying that, and I heard a little bit of what you had to say, is that kudos to the Independent, and I kind of ignored it, didn't retweet it or anything like that, and was talking among friends, including Mark, that's interesting, but nothing was happening. And then yesterday, after the courts are closed, I thought, well, nothing's happened, you know. Mm-hmm. So I kind of talked to friends and said, well, I guess they were wrong. And then as soon as I said that, boom, you know, everything broke loose. You know, this was after the courts were actually closed. And of course, as you just said, was Donald Trump himself who announced it. You know, he you know, one thing he is
got to get out in front of it,
good
Jim.
at is getting ahead of the story, laying the narrative. And so he got out that narrative you were just speaking about, the narrative of, you know, Joe Biden is out to get me. This is the current president worried that I'm running against him and they're trying to undercut my presidency. And of course, Biden has been very careful not to mention it. He didn't mention it today. He ignored questions about it today. He doesn't, you know, he is being smart. As David Axelrod said, I would advise him to do exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
and not get involved, not comment, because it would just play right into that narrative that he's behind it. And of course, there's a special counsel here. It's not even Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
This is a guy who was separate from the Justice Department, was in fact working for the working internationally, and was brought back to lead the investigation. And he is a no-nonsense guy. One of the things I was saying was, NBC got that video of him the other day walking down the street to Washington, and he didn't say a word, but his demeanor was, I was scared, and I haven't committed any crimes. I'm sitting over here, and he's not to be messed with, and I think he's got the business end of things going on right away.
The one thing I think I was reading in the Washington Post that President Biden did say was that Americans can trust the Justice Department.
Yes, and I think that's what's interesting too. Kevin McCarthy has already come out and called it, weaponization of the Justice Department and the FBI. All the Republicans are lining up on that talking point at this point, and they don't even yet know what's in the indictment. They don't know until probably Tuesday. And what's interesting about that, Kim, is that on Tuesday, this is going to be a spoken indictment, according to ABC News. So what that means is that this, unlike the one in New York, which in the first day, there was very little information coming about what it was until they released it later. This time, it appears as though the federal prosecutors will stand up in that Miami court and lay out the charges against Donald Trump, and in detail, I'm told, by ABC News. And that should be fascinating. And I don't know if that'll change a lot of people's minds, but I bet you it changes if there were any independents out there that were still holding out.
Yeah.
Some moderate Republicans, if there are any of those left, then that might, in fact, change their mind, or at least open their minds to waiting until the trial happens.
Do you think the reason we're seeing the charges now had anything to do with the revelations in recent days about, with the audio recording, with the flapping of the paper and all that maybe kickstarted whatever we're seeing happening?
I think it was pretty damning evidence. But today, in fact, there's a transcript of that call that's been put out, and in that transcript, this is it's not a call; it's a meeting, and it's a meeting with somebody who's writing a book about President Trump, and actually writing a book about Mark Meadows and his chief of staff, and they're interviewing Donald Trump, and Trump is agitated about the fact that one of his defense chief, one of the army chiefs, has said that he had plans to attack Iran. And he's agitated about that and says, that's not true. In fact, I've got these documents, these papers, and you hear him rustling them. Mm-hmm. And he says, here's one. It says that I wasn't doing that. Here's another one that says I'm not doing that. And then he says, but I can't release these because they're secret and I'm not president anymore, so I can't unclassify them. Hello. There's your defense, this whole defense that his lawyers have been putting out all over the press for the last weeks, up in flames. He admits that he has classified documents, number one. Number two, he admits that he can't declassify them when he's not president. So that's a very important document. I think that was very, indicative, and one of the reasons why he was indicted now. I think also the videotapes that they found of his aide, his valet, his bagman, moving boxes, and that guy was this morning also indicted, which was new. This morning he was indicted as well.
Is that related to the flooding from the pool of the document area? I don't know.
Again, no specifics, but I think it has something to do with the moving of the boxes. That's for sure. And and what's interesting is that I've heard a lot of legal folks say this morning that if he didn't know what was in the boxes, if he didn't, this valet didn't know what was in the boxes, he wouldn't have been charged. He had to have knowledge of what he was doing. So he was, according to the federal government, they allege at least, that he was an active participant in this conspiracy. It is, I was glued. I mean, as a news person, I'm sure you were too.
Oh
as
yeah.
a political junkie. I mean, once it came out yesterday, I didn't turn the TV off until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore last night, watching what was going on.
One of the things in talking to people about it, well, I have a friend, and I said, I told her, did you hear about this? And she said, oh, it doesn't mean anything. He's never going to jail. Nothing's ever going to happen, which kind of reminded me of this comment from Lori. She says, do you really expect this to have any meaningful consequence other than to make him a martyr to his MAGA people and energize them to campaign and vote? I mean, are we going to see him ever go to jail? And is it a good thing for a former president of the United States to be incarcerated? Is that good for America or bad for America? I don't know.
Look, the whole Trump presidency has been bad for America. So is this another chapter in the terrible things that Donald Trump is doing to this country? Yes. In answer to Lori's question, I think there's a good possibility that there will be meaningful consequences. I do think that this, and remember, this is one of four things now, right? So you got the New York hush money payment and his lying about on his records. You have this, the second thing to drop, which is the Mar-a-Lago documents. Still to come in Washington, D.C., will be the January 6th indictments, if there is an indictment, but that's the investigation and certainly possibility of that. And we know in Georgia that that's coming up in July, so that's the fourth. Out of those four, something's going to happen, in my belief. I think it will. Now, is there a scenario where nothing happens? And that's very frightening for this country, because the scenario is, and I'm just going to put this out there because Mark's not here and he's the doom and gloom guy. I don't really think this is going to happen, but this is the scenario that people are on his side are thinking is going to happen. He's able to continue to run for election, right? This makes him a martyr.
Yep.
Somehow he wins.
Even if he's convicted of a crime, he can run, right?
He can run. Even if he's convicted before the election, he can continue to run. So he makes himself a martyr. This case he's been building, for months works. And, he demonizes and says the FBI and the U.S. attorney have been weaponized by the Bidens, and they're after him. He wins the election. He can pardon himself. And then
what kind of system is that? That is cockamamie craziness right there.
Absolutely. And if the trial hasn't happened, or if there's still trials to happen, he can order the Justice Department to drop the charges. So is there a lane? I think it's a very small lane, okay? But there's a lane. Yes, his people will be weaponized, will be energized, in my opinion. That may wear off, but I think equally energized will be Democrats and independents in this country who see it for what it is. He lost when his people were energized in 2020. So he will. I don't think they'll energize enough to beat the other people who are energized by the absurdity of this and the treason of what's going on here. And I believe, unlike Mark, I continue to believe in the overall goodness of the American people and of humanity. And there's no way that goodness is going among the majority of people in this country, which I continue to believe is 70% of the non-Trumpers, the non-MAGA people, will allow that to happen, will allow him to escape justice.
Okay, but having said that,
yes,
it's shocking to me to see the double-digit lead in the recent polling of GOP candidates and potential candidates that Trump has over DeSantis, with all of the indictments, with a civil conviction of sexual abuse, with now his his base does not divert from supporting him. And I don't think that you would see, as you mentioned, the GOP members coming out and saying, "Oh, they're weaponizing the Department of Justice, and we still support Trump," if he didn't have the numbers to say, "Look, I'm going to be your candidate, so you better line up behind me."
Well, it's a Republican primary. Okay, that's a whole different thing than the general election. And the Republicans saw what happened at the midterms because the two, in my opinion, there were two big reasons they lost or didn't make gains in the midterms they thought they were. Number one was abortion, of course, and that issue is not going away. And number two was the January 6th insurrection. And this is a continuation of that. And while he will continue to resonate among that pocket of Republicans who only watch Fox News or one of the other right-wing media, that filters out all of this other stuff that's negative about him. So they don't see it, and so they're not going to change. I don't believe they're going to change. He'll probably still win the Republican primary unless these charges really stick somehow. And I don't think they're going to stick in the Republican Party that much. I think Chris Christie's going to do his best to attack him, and this gives him more ammunition. But will it have an effect? Will on that base? No, I think he still is in the best position to win the Republican primary. But I think that's the end of the line.
I am seeing so many people want to talk about this issue. And there's a lot of questions, and I agree with this comment from Hula Staff rather, my bad, I'm sorry, who says, Georgia and January 6th are much worse, in my humble opinion, than the document incidents, unless the document incidents are connected to somehow selling United States secrets, or because that's been floated as well. So if it's a crime against America, if it's not just, I took these documents because I wanted to have them because somehow I'm, power hungry and the rules don't apply to me. But we know that one of the charges is under the Espionage Act. So while we don't know exactly what that means yet, because we haven't seen the indictment, that's kind of a little scary. So I don't know how you have a president who then gets elected and pardons himself for charges related to espionage, and how that's allowed to stand. It's really frustrating.
It is a frustrating thing, but in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. So until he's found guilty, then that's an issue. Now, do I believe that these charges are serious as insurrection? Probably not, but and it does depend upon what you're saying here, Kim, is what he did with those documents,
right?
Who he showed them to. The fact that in that audio tape, which we have a transcript of, that he was showing them to a reporter or talking about them, what the contents were in that room to somebody who doesn't have a security clearance, that's a problem. We don't know who these people are that he's shown them to. The people he has at Mar-a-Lago are troublesome. There are, we know that there was once a Chinese spy in Mar-a-Lago who was seen taking a picture with him. So we do know that there are, there are
make
people.
Stuff up, Jim. You just can't.
It's just amazing. So. And we have to be a little careful of the espionage charge. And that's because, according to the legal experts I was listening to yesterday, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a reporter, the espionage charge doesn't mean that he committed treason at this point. Just the handling of the documents the way he did, the way he is alleged to have done, doesn't it could come under the Espionage Act, doesn't mean that he sold them to Russia or sold them to Saudi Arabia. I think, my personal opinion has always been, knowing Trump and watching his way he acts, that it was an ego thing. That just like he thought they were his to use. his to
Yeah.
show off. Look what I have. You know, here's the letter from the North Korean dictator, and how much he liked me, and showed them around. You know, is
That's
it
kind of
possible?
that's a best case scenario, right?
Yes, but that's still bad, and it's
Yeah.
terrible, and it's wrong. You know, if he did either try to use them for blackmail, which is possible, or use them for his economic gain, which he's been a grifter since day one, and that's certainly
Mhm.
possible. That's a real problem. And or if he, gave him to Putin because he wants to build a hotel in Moscow, that's a problem. But
I
otherwise, I agree with her that January 6th, to me, because it's treason,
Mhm.
is a more important issue. And I noticed in the comments one from from our viewers or listeners
Mhm.
that state charges he can't pardon himself on. That's true, but as president, he can certainly use a lot of influence on the Republican Georgia officials when he won election again, if he wins election again, to try to get that overturned. But that is a problem for him, and that's great. That's wonderful.
Check out this comment from Phineas, because I didn't know that was if this is the case. It's ironic the law Trump passed about documents will be used to prosecute him. He intended the documents law for Hillary. I don't know. I didn't know he passed a documents law, and if that is being used against him. I don't know.
Yeah, he passed a law that or signed a law, and I'm not sure it's a law or if it was an executive order. I'd have to look back on that, but that did make it illegal to have classified documents on your device.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because Hillary Clinton was accused of
Right.
having some classified documents on her personal device. Of course, she was never charged with that, and never went to trial on that. And that's one of the things he says is, unfair use of government resources to get him, and they didn't go after everybody else. He also claims now that his issue with documents is the same as Biden, which it's not. As the best analogy I've heard, and I used this before on your program, is that Joe Biden walked out of the store with some items in his basket that he didn't pay for, and when stopped by the security guard, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, here they are. Take them back. I'll pay for them." Donald Trump, in his basket, had some documents, walked out of the store, was stopped by security, and ran away and hid them. That's the big difference in this case. That's not what Mike Pence did, and that's why he's already been cleared by the Justice Department. That's not what Joe Biden did, and that's why he's not been charged as of yet, and has a special counsel still investigating that.
I mean, you have to think that maybe our policy on the keeping of top secret documents is a little lax, and maybe there needs to be better oversight of all that. But it's clear that when it was discovered that other politicians had these documents, they immediately said, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, take them back. It was an oversight, an error," and that's not what happened here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why Donald Trump was indicted, is that
Yeah.
not only did he not give them back. So, this Republican argument, the talking point continues to be that he's been treated unfairly. The FBI raided his home when they were not, when he was still cooperating, while he was cooperating with in a process of returning these documents. Well, that's simply not true. The timeline of this was they talked to them, asked them to bring some back. He sent some back, not all of them. They said, "Hey, there's a lot of stuff missing here."
Yeah.
They then had to. He didn't send anything back. They subpoenaed him. He didn't send anything back. When they didn't get anything back after the subpoena, the FBI was asked to investigate. The FBI got a search warrant from a judge, not on their own, just kind of willy-nilly walking into his house, they got a search warrant in which you have to prove probable cause.
Yeah.
And they did prove probable cause, and they went in and they found more documents. So, and they continued to find more documents as it went on. So
They
it's
found
totally
him here.
different.
They found him there. They found him up
Yes,
over
everywhere
here.
you turn,
Yeah.
there's a document.
Yeah.
Here's a document for you. Here's a document for you, and for you too. So,
Thank you, Oprah.
Yeah, huge difference in what both, and he keeps pointing to Obama. Obama's was totally different. Obama's had an agreement with the archives. The archives sent people out with the documents, found a neutral location, secure location that they could have next to where Obama could go and review the documents. He didn't put them in his house on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
He went to a place to look at them. And so all this whataboutism and the smoke, plays to the ears of Fox and plays Fox News, and to his core supporters. But I think if we repeat after over and over, that's why it's so important what the media does. I've been very critical in my columns recently about what CNN has been doing, and they did it again with Nikki Haley, even Nikki Haley on national television in their town hall, said that the leading cause of suicide among young girls is transgenderism. Their fear of that a transgender person is going to walk into their bathroom. That has nothing to. There's no fact that backs that up. And CNN just sat there and let her say it.
Yeah.
There's no, and it's just wrong.
She also said some outrageous things about late-term abortion that was like head-scratching, and you're thinking, what? No.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Trump does that constantly, and we have to be very careful. There was a Trump attorney on CNN this morning, and I'm trying to remember her name. She does that program where they have three of them. She used to be the morning anchor. Maybe one of your viewers will help, but it'll come to me in a minute, but she was on with a Trump attorney who just said some of the things I just talked to you about the talking points, and she let it go. At the end of the segment, she turned to her partner, John Berman, and said, you're next. No pushback, and that just can't happen in today's world. No. Trump has changed the way the media needs to work.
Yeah.
We can't operate as though this is the Reagan era. It's not. We have to, as reporters, stand up and push back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is extremely clear. And something else very clear, Jim Avila, is that I could talk to you about this for the entire 2-hour show and then go beyond that. Oh, I'm frozen in time again. But I have to tell you that what I am excited about is that I do get you back and I do get to continue the conversation, because at 11 o'clock, I get to hear you and Michael Shure talking about this again. And I have more things to ask you as well. We'll dig into those town halls and other things as well. So I am going to take a moment and a beat and have a little bit of fun with Florida on this wonderful, fabulous Friday. And then I'll check back in with you. Is that okay?
That's great. We'll see you. And I'm sure Michael has plenty of insightful things to say.
I'm sure you can hardly wait.
Yeah, I love him.
Thank you, Jim Avila. We love you. We'll see you in a minute. Bye. Let us now welcome these two amazing friends of the Mark Thompson Show. I have been waiting for this for at least since about, I'd say, 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I'm very excited to welcome back award-winning journalist Jim Avila, friend of the show. Hi, Jim.
How you doing, Kim? Lots of new developments just happened, as you saw, as you just reported.
Yeah, let's get into it, and let's bring on Michael Shure as well, another award-winning journalist and friend of the show. Hi.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
So good. So another indictment, another day, another indictment, one could say. And now we know a little bit more. Jim, can you get into this for us? Because I know we have a little more information about what's in that indictment.
Right. And I sent it to you and Albert, so you could probably put some of it up on the screen. it does go into detail. So this is a lot different than what happened in New York, okay, right away. And in fact, as you mentioned as well, Jack Smith is going to have a news conference at noon Pacific time, where he'll probably talk more about this indictment. But it's very strong, and in fact, the strongest parts you reported is it details what's in these documents, and part of what's in these documents are nuclear secrets. Were in the documents. Specifically says nuclear secrets. So specifically says defense plans for the United States and for our allies are in this.
That's kind of the worst of the worst scenario, isn't it? Like that's the absolute thing you don't want him to have.
Yeah, I think that that this is Republicans who are trying to dismiss it as not important or a witch hunt really have to deal with what they're seeing with this. This is pretty strong stuff, Michael.
It is, and so there are a couple of points that are important to make here. Is that Trump very clearly on tape, according to this, admitted to not having declassified these documents before leaving office, which would have been an out for him. The other part of this, I think, when taken en masse, is that the politicization of this is going to be very difficult. If Republicans who have supported Trump in the past see what has happened here with nuclear secrets, with the misbehaving of a former president, even in contrast to a sitting president and a former vice president at whose homes they found some of these similar types of documents, at least not at the archives in their possession. We don't know the details of them. This stands juxtaposed to that because of how egregious it was. And it should is a big word these days, talk to the politicization of this. This is not about politics if you take what's in this indictment seriously. And it's going to take some Republicans to stand up and admit that. Some Republicans, frankly, who supported this guy in the past. Let
me read you one paragraph here, folks.
Yeah.
In this indictment. In August or September of 2021 at the Bedminster Club, Trump showed a representative of his political action committee who did not possess a security clearance, a classified map related to a military operation, and told the representatives that he should not be showing it to the representative and that the representative should not get too close. It's just...
Don't get too close to me, top secret. I'm sorry, step away.
It's showing off, basically. He's saying, look at me, I was the president. I'm from Queens, and I was the president. And you don't get too close to this because you're not supposed to see it. But the bottom line is he wasn't supposed to show it, and that's why he was indicted.
One more. In July 2021 at Trump National Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, during an audio recorded meeting with a writer, a publisher, and members of his staff, none of whom possessed a security clearance, Trump showed and described a plan of attack that Trump said was prepared for him by the Department of Defense and a senior military official. Trump told the individuals that the plan was highly confidential and secret. Trump also said, as president, I could have classified it and I could have declassified it, declassified it, it's an important word, and now I cannot, because it's still a secret. That's the one we've been hearing about, of course.
Yeah, which
but
leads
it's right
to
there in the indictment.
That he had knowledge of what he needed to do and didn't. So that kind of shows that he knew what was happening here.
And this is sobering stuff. I mean, this is actually chilling stuff to a degree, because this is a wayward president showing things and taking them lightly, things that are among the most seriously protected and classified documents. This isn't just, a classified document about the president speaking off the cuff about an undersecretary nominee that he's putting before the Senate. This is serious military and nuclear information, according to the indictment.
That is, and we're trusting the world's biggest idiot to handle that. And it doesn't matter what an idiot he acts like. It seems like he gets away with everything.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, I mean, I think Jim was going to. I'll let Jim talk about that.
No, go ahead, Michael.
No.
I have some more details in here when you get done.
Yeah. I mean, just to answer what Kim was saying, I mean, whether or not you think he's the world's biggest idiot, he was the elected president, and he was the person who was privy to this. What he did with it is what should get Democrats and Republicans and Americans infuriated. So whatever sort of opinions you want to cast on the man, the role of president and the role of someone who's entrusted with classified documents is not to share them, and not to share them with a PAC donor at your country club.
That's why I say idiot. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think that's important to remember. The other thing is that, there's going to be a lot of Democrats who lean back and say, imagine if Obama had done this, or Clinton or Carter, right? That's not enough to say. That's the thoughts and prayers of Democrats, right? That's not enough to say. You have to do something here. And you have to say that this is now depoliticized. This is somebody who went awry of the law, who had our most sacred secrets shared with people who anybody knows, or nobody knows.
But they're not saying that. I mean, they're lining up behind him already. And listen to this, you two. He had these documents, according to this indictment. They had them at the Mar-a-Lago estate, including in a ballroom, in his bedroom, and even a bathroom.
Yeah,
I don't know how. Yeah, what? And so how you compare, or how you keep lining up behind this person, it's unfathomable to me. That's a thing.
So in the document as well, that was just released, the affidavit behind the indictment, it talks about why he's charged with obstruction. A, suggesting that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that Trump did not have documents called for by the grand jury subpoena. Directing defendant Waltine Nauta, that's the guy who was his bagman, his body man, to move boxes of documents to conceal them from Trump's attorney, the FBI, and the grand jury. So that's the conspiracy charge, right? He tells his aide to move the boxes and hide them from the FBI. And then he caused a certification to be submitted to the FBI grand jury, falsely representing that all documents called for by the grand jury subpoena had been produced, while knowing that in fact not all such documents had been produced. So, as a friend of mine just texted me a moment, his goose is cooked.
Yeah, there are 37 counts in this federal indictment.
I think what Jim's friend said is important too, because it doesn't matter what Republicans say. It doesn't matter what Democrats say. It matters what the law says and what he did. And the cooking of the goose seems to have started because however much you stand behind this person, if he is in fact an indicted and then convicted criminal, that's the law of the land, and that's the law. This is a federal indictment. This is not just a state indictment. And so I think it's super important to remember that a lot of this is noise and the partisanship and the politicization, which is why it will behoove some Republicans who have formerly supported this president, this former president, to actually come away and say exactly, in better terms, what I just said, that this is about the law.
And the bad part too, Kim and Michael, is that, that 30% we always talk about who are always Trumpers no matter what he does can cause a lot of problems between now and the election and after the election. We saw what happened in January 6th. There can be more of that. It would be stupid and it would be over, hopefully in a flash, but they could start a civil war. I mean, that's not out of the question, is that they will start attacking parts of this country that represent the federal government all over the country. Down here on Wilshire Boulevard, where the FBI is at, that now is in jeopardy because of what he is saying and what his supporters are saying. Now, what I would remind them, not that any of them really listen to this show, but I would remind them that an F-16 will annihilate their handgun. Even their AK-47 will not stand up to the power of the American government. And that they should think twice about mobilizing militias and trying to defend this man. He is going to go to jail if these things are proven, and he belongs there. And let's hope that the 70% that includes independents and Democrats see him for what he is.
Let's talk
I
about.
can't believe Jim just doxed the FBI, but whatever.
Let's talk about, though, you mentioned that he could really go to jail, right? And I was reading this article in The Guardian about whether or not jail is a real possibility here. And it looks like they're saying no. They look at all these politicians who have, done things that landed them in hot water, and they all seem to get pardoned, or they seem to never really end up behind bars. So it doesn't look like, that he really will go to jail in this case either.
Well, in this case, there are other cases, and we're talking about precedent. This is unprecedented, right? So there is no analog to what we're talking about right now. Yes, people have been pardoned in the past. This is treason, if proven in court, and so I think you're dealing with a different hand here, and that's why I say that law is generally what prevails, and if people do push back against it, obviously that would be horrendous, and some of the extreme consequences and possibilities that Jim outlined just now, let's obviously hope that we're not going to get to that. But I do think that that's why, consistent with what I said earlier, that's why some Republicans and some far right Republicans would have a lot of currency to gain by now going against this, by now being outraged at what these indictments say. Because if that is in fact the truth, and what has been presented in this affidavit and these indictments are true, then again, it blurs every political line. This is American, and they call themselves, many of them, patriots. The least patriotic thing to do is share our nuclear secrets with the people. Even Trump at a time, and it's in the indictment, talked about how he's entrusted with these things, and these should not be shared with people unless they are meeting the highest level of security. I'm paraphrasing, but it's in the indictment what Trump has said in the past about this.
It seems like kind of the smoking gun, if you will. I mean, those comments that they could be just turned around and used right against him. Albert, I'd love to play, if we have it, what Trump had to say after the indictments yesterday, if we have that video. But I'll go back to something you just said, Michael Shure, which is something Kevin McCarthy mentioned yesterday, tweeted out. He said, "It is unconscionable for a president to indict the leading candidate opposing him." So kind of to what you just said about they're still supporting him, right? This is from Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House. He said, "I and every American who believes in the rule of law stand with President Trump against this grave injustice." Even Ron DeSantis, who is his chief competitor at this point, says, "The weaponization of the federal law enforcement represents a mortal threat to free society. Why so zealous in pursuing Trump, yet so passive about Hillary and Hunter?" They're not backing down.
This was pre-indictment. I mean, Jim can talk about it. This was before.
This was last night.
This was last night. It's going to be hard for these people to stand by these remarks.
Yeah, I think once Jack Smith gets up on this noon press conference and reads this stuff out, and people who care really read about that, it's going to be interesting to see what Fox does with this, because they're, of course, in that bubble and they only watch Fox and the other crazy places, Newsmax. And if they put the indictment on, or if they carry Jack Smith's press conference, that'll be interesting, because they'll be forced to watch what they usually try to ignore and are shielded from. What's in this indictment, I find it hard to believe that Kevin McCarthy even will stand by that statement, because this detail, this is treason. And they, remember on January 6th, right after January 6th, Kevin McCarthy blasted Trump because he actually saw what it was, and then he backpedaled. This is, again, January 6th, what is described in this stuff.
And what another thing to add to that is that, and this is a little forgiving, I mean, Kevin McCarthy is the Speaker of the House. He is a politician. to turn this on the Biden Justice Department is almost a reflexive reaction, or to turn it on to Biden is almost a reflexive reaction from someone who plays on a team like Kevin McCarthy does. At a certain point, though, it's going to backfire. It's going to come back to McCarthy if he sticks with Trump all the way, and these indictments are proven in court. So I get what he's doing. He's a political animal, and that's what political animals do. It's smart to say Joe Biden is doing this. Joe Biden has kept arm's distance. It is his Justice Department. It is his administration. What McCarthy is doing is understandable, but that is going to look as bad as Trump saying that you don't share secrets one day.
Absolutely. And when the independents and the Democrats, even the moderate Democrats, see what's in this, and if he's convicted or continues to have the defense that he's had, which is no defense, I would predict not only will they lose no matter who runs as a Democrat in 2024, whether Joe Biden makes it all the way or continues to run or not as a weak candidate, whoever that is will win, and they will suffer massive losses across the country in every purple state that there is, and every purple district that there is. Now, they've gerrymandered things such that they will still hold on to some. Otherwise, it could be a blanket defeat. If you continue to support a man who has done this stuff, how can that win?
Yeah, and not to mention yesterday, this is yesterday's news now, but the Supreme Court ruling in Alabama likely means that Democrats, because of other states who are going to challenge that and be unable to, it's precedent setting, there are going to be some more seats for Democrats in the next Congress, regardless, forgetting Trump. And he already has such a slim majority, does McCarthy. So it hasn't been a good day for the speaker. It hasn't been a good couple of days, but he should be careful about what he supports and how vocally and ferociously he supports it.
So we have the video of Trump's response yesterday. Let's take a look at that.
A boxer's hoax, just like the Russia hoax. And all of the others, this has been going on for 7 years, that they can't stop because it's election interference at the highest level. There's never been anything like what's happened. I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent person. They had the Mueller hoax, the Mueller report, and that came out. No collusion after 2.5 years. They come after me because now we're leading in the polls again by a lot against Biden and against the Republicans by a lot. But we're leading against Biden by a lot, a tremendous amount. And we went up to a level that they figured the way they're going to stop us is by using what's called warfare. And that's what it is. This is warfare for the law. And we can't let it happen. We can't let it happen. Our country is going to hell. And they come after Donald Trump. We have such big problems. And this shouldn't be one of them. It's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax. Just like Russia, just like the fake dossier was a hoax.
Okay.
You saw the Durham report. You saw the Mueller report. It was all a big hoax. You had
we
two
got
impeachments, and they lost and we won. And we had tremendous support. But that was a hoax and a scam. Yeah. And now they're doing it again. It's just a continuation, 7 years. I'm innocent, and we will prove that very, very soundly and hopefully very quickly. Thank you very much.
So that's what he has to say. It's a hoax. I'm innocent. Oh, by the way, election interference. I want to fast forward to this. It's a what if scenario. But say he's convicted and also wins the presidency. And as Jim Avila mentioned earlier, is then able to pardon himself and all those involved. What happens to America if we have this guy back in the White House? That is like my absolute, what if horrible things happen, nightmare scenario. What happens to our country?
Well, first of all, I would put that in a box.
Okay.
Because if this doesn't seal it, I'm going to be living in Vancouver. You can send me my check there, because
the Canucks are on an upswing now too.
There we go. Good hockey there.
Yeah.
But
a little smoky up there, but you'll get used to it.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to win. As I said to you earlier, and I'll let Michael talk about this, there's a very narrow lane. very narrow lane, that he wins the election, he pardons himself. If he's been convicted already, if the trial is still going on, he can order the Justice Department to stop proceedings. He can do all that as a president. I don't think he's going to become president. I don't think the American people will allow that to happen. And frankly, if they do, this country is not what we believe it to be.
Look, if the possibility exists, I mean, you can play out every fantasy, but part of that fantasy is that he pardons himself in the federal indictments. We're still waiting to hear from Georgia. We still know what we heard from New York. A president can't pardon in state court. There's a lot of legal acreage in front of Donald Trump still, and this is not the only thing. This seems to be horrendous for him, and I agree with Jim. I don't think there's a way that this man can woo independents, that can woo disaffected Democrats. Even in the polling we talked about, I think last week, there's been polling, focus group polling, of people who are Democrats, registered Democrats, who don't like Joe Biden, who don't think that this presidency has been good, who don't want him to run again. Unanimously, without fail, they all said that they would vote for Biden against Trump. So the disaffected Democrat is even not going to vote for Donald Trump. I think the political road ahead, pardon, no pardon, jail, no jail, is very, very difficult for Trump regardless. That's just what I believe. But again, he could pardon himself if he were to become president again. I don't think he would be, and he's not able to pardon himself in state cases.
I think it was that feeling that this will never happen. When he was elected, right? We're not going to worry about this. No one's really going to vote for him. Americans aren't this stupid. And to see that they did and that he was the president makes me feel panic right now. But I hear you, Jim Avila. Don't jump off the ledge just yet. I'll put it in a box. But I feel like it's something to motivate people.
No, I know what you're saying, Kim. There's that once bitten, twice shy thing. But I have to say that in this case, we know so much more about the man.
Right. Yeah.
Republicans and independents know so much more about him. The novelty has worn off for many people. And, aside from the scary stuff like violence and reprisal and things like that, I don't think the worry is the same.
In 2016, people voted for Trump in the middle because they thought, what's the worst that can happen? Let's give it a shot. Well, we have found out what the worst is that can happen, right, as Michael says. And I don't think, I think that 7 years, as Trump put it, of living through what he can do to this country has cured those people in the middle of any fantasy that Donald Trump is good for this country. I don't believe that that'll happen again. I really believe that he has done his best to convince the independents that he is dangerous for this country.
From nuclear secrets to the January 6th investigation, before I let you guys go, I'm going to take up some news time. Instead of news, I want to keep you a little longer if that's okay. But I want to ask you about Newt Gingrich. And I don't know if you saw this article out of CNN, but they are talking about former Republican House Speaker Newt Gingrich testified before a federal grand jury on Thursday investigating January 6th. And what they're saying is that documents obtained by the House Select Committee investigating January 6th, apparently claiming Gingrich played a role in the effort to submit fake slates of electors in the battleground states that Trump lost. That according to committee documents. Is anybody surprised by this?
I mean, no. I mean, it's Georgia, and Newt Gingrich is a prominent Georgia Republican. This has been whispered about. I mean, am I surprised about it? No, because there was this. Newt Gingrich was a wildly partisan speaker and became a Trump partisan, and it's. I think he also probably had some battles with Biden and Biden's Judiciary Committee when Biden was in the Senate. So it doesn't surprise. I mean, nothing surprises me anymore. I mean, even this indictment doesn't totally surprise me.
I think he's trying to be relevant again, and I think he found in Lane to try to get his name back in, and he attempted some things. Newt Gingrich was the beginning of the destruction of the Republican Party. And he can take responsibility for that and put that in his hat, because it's been a downward slope since then, from him to the Tea Party, now to the MAGA people and to the Freedom Caucus. It's a straight line, and it's they've alienated enough people that they're in bad shape. They're now trying to say that young people should not vote. That
I heard that.
Not only are trying to make it harder by closing polling places on college campuses if they can, but they want to raise the voting age, and prohibit college students from voting on campus, but have to go all the way home to vote. Anything they can do, because they realize that demographics are not in their favor.
No, they are not.
And having people
it's desperation.
Allowing people the franchise has always been a problem for that wing, whatever party it was at the time, and we know that the parties have evolved to be very different from what they were. But it's true. I mean, they wanted, and Newt Gingrich is responsible for so much of the demise of that party and demise of American politics. That it's not surprising that they took Dennis Hastert's portrait down. Maybe one day they'll take Newt Gingrich's portrait down.
So I also promised to ask you about the town halls that CNN is doing. Anything you guys want to talk about, or that you've been rolling around thinking about these town halls, why they're doing them, whether we need them, whether anything interesting has come out of them?
They did the Trump one, and the person who was heading CNN was out of a job. Weeks to a month later. I wouldn't criticize doing that town hall. I would criticize the way they're doing them. It's always, I'm a political junkie, so I like a town hall, but these aren't town halls either. So they're being mislabeled. These are audiences and
they're like little mini rallies,
but with partisans.
Yeah.
Exactly, they're mini rallies. A town hall is different, and I would guess that a lot of the people that have sat for what you call mini rallies, Kim, would not sit for town halls.
Yeah, and I think that clearly we've talked about the Trump town hall and how bad it was. The Nikki Haley one wasn't much better as far as disinformation and fact checking immediately. Now, afterwards, they did fact check it. They've got that guy, Dan, I can't remember his name, but he's good. And he did a fact check on her. But as we mentioned before,
Dale, right?
What's that?
Is it Dale? Daniel Dale? Is that who?
Yes, that's right. Dan Dale. As we mentioned before, Kim, at the top of the show, she had misinformation about transgender people.
Yep.
And misinformation about abortion, about Biden and Kamala Harris's position on abortion,
Right.
and they were not fact checked immediately. And in fact, one of the fact checks that Jake tried was not correct. And Pence, Pence did not lie as much, but he wasn't pushed back on some of the crazy things he said. Like, how do you not ask over and over again, wait a minute, you believe he should be treated like anybody else, but you don't believe that he should be charged if it's found that there's evidence found against him?
Right.
That's totally, why would the moderator not do that? And so, the push by CNN, and I've written about this a couple times, by CNN to go to the middle. What it's done is, first of all, there is no middle. Okay, there's no middle left. People have been driven into choosing sides, and the middle is so small that if you're a network and you're trying to appeal the middle, you're appealing to a very small portion of people. And in this push to appear to get the middle, he's brought on Republicans who are still election deniers. And people who talk over their moderators. That Florida congressman, and Michael will help me with the name, but I think it's Daniels, right?
Yes.
He right after the Trump one.
Donalds. Byron Donalds, is that?
Donaldson, right? Donaldson. Right after the Trump, he was on the panel, brought on the panel, And he started yelling, that, and he would not listen to the other commentators. And usually it's a pretty civil place on CNN, where they have a couple Republicans who are middle of the road Republicans, moderate Republicans. But this guy, they started allowing these folks on. Now he's been banned from CNN again because of that night. But that's the kind of performance that they've allowed to happen.
Yeah.
It also puts journalists into a bad position, because it's impossible to do what we're asking them to do in the moment at the time. So they're hurting their brand, they're hurting their team. This is, much more effective, especially with a partisan audience, much more effective for people to sit down across the table on Face the Nation or Meet the Press and do it that way. And that's imperfect as well. So I just think this is backfired clearly on CNN, and they've got to find a better way of doing this. They're in their effort to find the middle, they're alienating everybody.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. So back to the Trump indictment, what we know comes next is he is expected to appear in a Miami federal courthouse on Tuesday. I'm assuming that's going to be a zoo, like the whole New York situation was a zoo. I don't know. What do you think that brings?
Moving a president is always a zoo, right? You have
Yeah.
the Secret Service, you have the local police. It is by its own nature a zoo. And now there's all this attention as to why he's going to be there. What comes out of it? Do they take his passport? Do they, we don't know everything that's going to come out of it. But yeah, I think New York was less zooey than people thought it would be.
Yeah.
So maybe Florida will end up being that way as well.
Guys, I've got to jump off.
Yeah.
I've got a call I got to take. So,
well, we're going to do a little
thanks,
news
Tim.
and
Great to
get
talk
on to
to
the
you.
movies. Thank you, Jim Avila. Thank
See
you
you,
for
Michael.
being here.
Bye, guys. See you later.
Thank
guys.
you, Michael Shure. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah. What a great conversation with Jim Avila and Mike.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.